Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well out there in Zoom land. If you are watching live, thank you for being here. If you are watching recorded, thank you for watching it. I hope all is well in your world and that you had a nice week away from Mr. Gomez. Okay, let me start with the announcement here that we are doing our annual MECHA and SCTA children's winter clothing gifts. Years ago, we used to try to get toys. Everybody wanted to get toys for the kids. One day we talked to the teachers and they said the kids, some of these schools don't even have clothing. And we thought that was kind of sad, especially over the holidays. So every year we adopt a school. We ask the teachers for their neediest children, and then we all pitch in and buy an outfit for these children ages 3 to 12. And then we give it to them so they have something nice to wear over the holidays. If you are able to give and you would like to give, we are doing the drive right now. We're asking a new clothing item. Could be for a girl, boy. You can bring as many items as you like, obviously. Shirts, pants, sweatshirts, dresses, things like that. And then we put it together as an outfit. Or if it's an outfit already, we put it with a sweatshirt or a sweater and something like that. And then we put it in a little bag and we deliver it to the school. And then they make sure the kids get that before they leave on winter break. So again, if you're able, let me know. I can either get it from you. You could drop it off outside my office here on the tables that are out there for that. My office is North Hall 322. There will be a drop-off center at the a drop-off box at the tutoring center, which is on the second floor of the liberal arts building. And that's generally, I think, 9 to 4, if I'm not mistaken, 9 to 4. And want to also make sure that if they have the drop-off dates in the parking lot, I can let you know when that is. So the students are working on that. I know I'm going to be in lot number 1 at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the 6th and on the 11th. On the 6th and the 11th, I'll be in the lot number 1 from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Or somebody will be down there with me. And then I think they're trying to get a couple afternoon drop-offs, so this afternoon's better for you. But again, if you can help and you're interested in helping, let me know, or just drop it off outside my office or up at the tutoring center, or wait for the drop-off dates and we'll fix it up, okay? Thanks so much for that. All righty. And by the way, we had a wonderful drop-off for the Thanksgiving. Thank you to all of you who gave and helped out. We had a really, really great turnout overall, and I was so happy to see that. And then we brought, I think 6 trunk loads full of food and a couple back seats included to a youth organization over off of was that 8th, I think 8th Street and F, somewhere in that area. And we dropped it off with them, and they were thrilled. They help youth and veteran families. So we're grateful that everybody helped us, and we did a great job. Thank you, guys. Okay, let's go over what we got to go over. And we got a lot to do, as this is the last real week of classes. Next week, we'll have a last bit lecture, and then we'll do a review session of the final essay. We will not do the Zoom session on Tuesday at 8 a.m. like normal, because I want to give everybody a chance to do assignments, get caught up, everything. And then on Wednesday, after you've looked at the final essay, which, by the way, will be open on Friday. So Friday of this week, I'll open it up. So that'll give you Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday the 10th, it's due. So I want you to look at it between Friday and Wednesday of next week. That gives you, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Gives you 6 days to look at it. And then on Wednesday morning, after you've looked at it, after you kind of look over your notes, your video notes, your Zoom notes, all that, then I'm going to do a review session on that on Wednesday at 8 a.m. And I will tell you, how basically to write it, give you the answers. But the hope is that by that point, you've started looking over it, making an outline or something. And that if you have questions, I can answer them then and there, so that we have you kicking right into gear and going into it. That way you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to finish that final essay. And that's your last chance to woo me, right? Make me excited and make sure that I know that you're doing your best and, bump up your grade there. So do everything you can, follow my instructions, follow the prompt as closely as possible, and you should get all the points. It's a 200 point, if I'm not mistaken. So you want to make sure you do your absolute best on that, okay? All right, so again, this week we're going to continue down our normal. We have, as you can see over here, your Zoom today. You're reading Occupied America, chapters 15 and 16, but most importantly, for the final exam, most importantly, you're reading chapters 2 and 3 this week in the Youth Identity Power, or the YIP book, right? There is a small article for you to look at about understanding the social sciences perspective on Chicano sociology. I'm going to give you some notes on that in a few minutes so you can go back and compare your notes with what you're studying. There's a video called Precious Knowledge, which is, if you haven't seen it already, it's just crazy. This is the 2000s, I believe like 2010, 11, and 12, and the state of Arizona was outlawing this class. So the class that you're currently taking, Chicano history, is outlawed in the state of Arizona. It's against the law to teach it. Since then, they were the first. Since then, well, actually, they weren't the first. It tried to happen in California. Myself, Carlos Munoz, the author of Youth Identity Power, and many other people across the state, we fought it very hard in the late 1990s, and we won. They lost. In Arizona, they won, and we lost, as you'll watch in the video. After that, now, if you go across the United States of America, there are 50 states. Out of the 50 states, 42 of the states have some laws either against teaching Chicano history, Black history, women's history, LGBT, or they have restrictions and limits, or they don't allow it at certain levels, or it is completely monitored by the state. So we are looking at, there has been a complete shift of opening up classes so that people could learn about the things that you're learning about, to shutting them down. In the state of Florida, it is against the law to teach slavery. You cannot teach about slavery because it hurts white people's feelings. So it is against the law. In the state of Texas, it's against the law also. In the state of places like Oklahoma and Florida, it's against the law to mention LGBTQ plus community. You will be fired. There are teachers who have been fired for talking about the LGBTQ community. They fire you and you lose your job. It goes on and on. I've given several presentations across the state of California to many organizations about this, but you could look it up yourself. The idea that what they call critical race theory is taking over is everywhere in the states, now all the United States, and most states are beginning to destroy these classes. So the class that you're looking at, this is maybe one of the last classes available on this, and it's a shame because these help people. So watch this video, keep it in your mind, and watch it all the time as you are, growing older and having children or whatever family, and remember what you learned here and try to protect these classes if you appreciate them, because they are under attack, and you'll see that in the video. You have your usual writing assignment. You have your usual what the fuck. You have your usual video quiz. Remember your YIP quiz. So on the YIP quiz, I went back, and probably about 50 or 60% of the people, I had to give updates, because remember, if you spell something wrong, or if you don't put a period, or if you don't put a capital, or whatever the computer requires, it marks you wrong. But don't worry, Mr. Gomez reads every quiz of everybody, every question, and every answer to make sure you get every point that you're supposed to. And of course, that takes time, but I want to make sure that if you misspelled something or you were kind of right, like I think one of the answers to last week, something was desegregation, and some of you put stop segregation in schools. It's the same thing. It's just not the word. So I had to go and change it and give you the points. Anyway, you have a second one of those, and you have your usual book exam on chapter 15 and 16. Are there any questions on what's required this week from you? Okay, then remember, on Friday of this week, you should see the assignments for next week open. Doesn't mean you have to do them right then, but they will be open. So in case you get finished here and you want to start moving on those for next week, that way you get those out of the way and start working on your final. Even if you just look it over on Wednesday, not Tuesday of next week, Wednesday of next week, I will do a review session of the final at 8 a.m. on Zoom to help you out. So be there or be square. All right, where are we? Well, our last discussion about our heroes was they had begun to talk about the issue of renaming themselves. They thought that the idea that they were Mexican American was no longer applicable to them. How did they know that? Well, they came back from the war. Remember that many of them had been raised as Mexican Americans. Why? Their moms and dads were immigrants. Just like my father was an immigrant from Mexico. And when he came here, he was treated like shit. And so were many of these people's parents. In order to protect me, Ed Gomez, my father, Jose Eduardo Gomez, decided I won't teach him Spanish. And I'll make sure that he knows everything about America so that nobody will ever treat him the way they treated me. Of course, that works to some degree, but it also denies you of your own culture, doesn't it? So it was a kind of a two-edged sword there. I do speak perfect English. I read perfect English. I write perfect English, but my Spanish is pocho and terrible. And it's sometimes embarrassing. And I'm ashamed. Now, since I've gotten older, when I got my own life under my own control, I have tried to gain more of my culture and get more of that back. Nothing against my father. He meant right. He meant to do well, but he didn't understand what importance my culture would mean to me at my age and in my life. So they also chose to teach their children back in the 1920s and 10s, as they had children, not to be Mexican, to be Mexican American, to speak English, to know about holidays, to dress properly, to do things the proper American way. And they were told as immigrants that if they did that, or their children, they would be totally accepted. There'd be no difference between them or any other quote unquote American. What they found out is that wasn't true. Shortly after the so-called assimilation era, 1880 to 1920, we go into the Great Depression. And no other immigrant groups, despite the fact that 26 million, no other immigrant groups, despite the fact that 26 million, no other immigrant groups, despite that 26 million people came during that era. None of them were rounded up, put in jails, put in concentration camps, and then escorted either by military or police onto trains or buses and sent to a foreign country that most of them had no connection to, at least in their lives, and dumped on the other side of the border. We know that as repatriation. We now know that at least close to 2 million people, most of who were American citizens. These were the children of the immigrants, right? Most of them who were American citizens were dumped in a country called Mexico that they did not have an allegiance to and did not have citizenship in. But because it was an easy target during the time of the Great Depression, they knew that this was happening. Added to that, the people who stayed, who didn't get deported, those Mexican Americans that were here, continued to face all kinds of discrimination, especially in housing, education, jobs, stuff like that. Then came World War II. Many of them signed up to prove to this country that they were true Americans. They went to die for this country. Many of them decided to start working in factories, on the docks, on the railways, to send materials to help this country win World War II. To help this country win World War II, thousands and thousands, millions maybe, Mexican Americans, Latino people lined up to go and fight and lined up to help in these factories, to work hard days, hard nights to help this country win. And when the war was over, they were told to fuck off and die again. This was a little bit of a shock to these young Mexican Americans who felt that they had done everything to prove they were true Americans. And some of them began to say, you know what? America does not want us to be true Americans. Look, when we try to buy a home, we're not allowed to in certain neighborhoods. When we try to get a job, we're not allowed to certain types of jobs. When we try to go to college and universities, they lock us out. When we try to do certain things in the society, they make it impossible. It's not us. We're trying. It's not us. We're trying. Something's wrong here. This point after World War II, our community is going to split into two pieces. One side is going to say, okay, let's just keep trying, keep doing everything the white people tell us, and maybe someday they'll accept us. And if they give us a little treat along the way, we'll be okay with that. Some went this way, said, this isn't right. They shouldn't be beating our people, locking us out of jobs, stopping us from getting education, denying us health care, etc. Something's wrong. They don't want us to be, so I don't want to call myself that anymore. I want to call myself something that I think our people can identify with. And of course, we talked about this last time. That was Chicano. They created a new identity. It is the only, listen to what I'm going to say, young people. It is the only, listen to what I'm going to say. It is the only self-identification that we've ever had in our society, in our group yet. We have had people call us Mexican Americans or whatever. We're not. That's not from us. That was outsiders. We've had people call us Hispanic, as we're going to talk about in a moment. We're not. That's from outsiders, not from inside. We've had people call us Latinos. That's outside, not inside. We've had people call us all these other names. The only name as of today, 2023, that was created by our community, for our community, about our community, in response to our community, is this term Chicano. As they look back at the loss of language, as they look back at our loss in our history, as they look back at the loss of our culture and our world perspective, they said, we are not truly being accepted as Americans, and therefore we should call ourselves something else. They looked through time, they looked through what people had used, different names. They thought maybe looked at some Indian names like Aztec or whatever, but a lot of us are not Aztec. As a matter of fact, there's probably very few, if any, alive. They murdered all the Aztec people. So there's no Aztecs probably left hardly at all. Are there Nahuatl-speaking people? Well, sure there are. People who had lived under the control and the kingdom of the Aztecs, yes. But they're not probably Aztec people. Most Aztec people died along the way. And so what we see now is, hey, what's going on? Who are we? One of the terms they began to look at and see over and over in the papers that they were reading and in the identifications was, how did the upper class call the poor, working class, indigenous people? And they used a term called Chicano. It was not supposed to be a good term. It was supposed to say, I have money and education, and you're kind of a naco. I don't know how many of you use that term naco. Is there anybody use the term naco? Maybe some of you don't use that. But anyway, kind of like trailer trash for white people. When they look at other white people, they see white people are the good white people, and then they kind of call the other ones trailer trash, right? Not a good thing. Chicano was not meant to be a good thing. They wanted us to hate ourselves. They wanted us to say, yes, you are so good. You're so wonderful because you're rich. And you're so wonderful because you speak proper Castilian Spanish. And you're so wonderful because you have big cars and you're so wonderful. I wish I was you so much. And I'm just so bad because I'm poor and I have a working class job and I don't, I have a native perspective of the earth. There's something wrong with me. They wanted us to hate ourselves. But as we studied last time, the Chicano said, no. Yes, it's true. My grandmother was poor. I told you that already in this class. Among the poorest people that I knew. She scrubbed floors until she was 78. And they took her to the doctor. Finally, when I took her, the doctor said, you can't let her do that anymore. She has no more hip. He literally showed me the socket where her hip went in, her leg went into her hip. It was gone. She was just like dragging that leg. He said, you can't let her do it no more. Yes, she was working class people. She would be on her hands and knees scrubbing the floor of other people, their offices and their buildings. And I watched one time as the owner of the building stepped over her while she was doing her work like she was a piece of shit. Didn't even say good night or anything. Just walked over her like she was a piece of shit. Broke my heart. Broke my heart. But even as a poor working class person, my grandmother helped all the time other people. She respected other human beings where she could. And if they didn't have food, she would ask why and help. And if they needed clothing, she would see if she had or where we could get clothing for them. If they needed directions, if they needed help in filling out paper, she did whatever she could. She reached out. She was the kindest person, despite the fact we shouldn't hate ourselves because we are poor, working class, indigenous people. As a matter of fact, we should take that as a point of pride. When I look at some of the rich people in this world, I'm not trying to condemn or judge. I understand what it says in the Bible, judge not others lest ye be judged by the same measures. So I'm not trying to judge them. I'm trying to just make a call. And the call is that I've seen a lot of rich people who don't do shit for other human beings. And they want me to be like that. I'm not going to be. I'd rather be like my grandmother. I'd rather not be a selfish person, a greedy and maybe I'll never have anything. Maybe I'll just continue to live the way I've lived in this world with the things that I need, and that'll just be it. But I don't care. Chicano said, we're going to take this term that means poor, working class, indigenous people who know that the community comes before an individual, that no individual should gather millions of dollars while women and children and elders and veterans are dying in the streets of the wealthiest nation in the history of the fucking world. No woman, no child, no person with a disability, no veteran who fought for our should be on the streets dying tonight while crazy ass people are gathering millions and maybe even billions of dollars and saying that they're better than us. This self-identification needed to be put into our understandings. And so the Chicanos asked to do that. When they brought this idea out, this was the beginning of the creation of the Chicano movement, the new movement. There had been the Mexican-American movement. Remember those who wanted to assimilate? They want us to become like the greater body. And some of us rejected that because we saw what was really happening. We saw that Mexican-American studies itself showed the inequality between Mexican-American people and other people in our country who were able to go and get jobs where they wanted, live where they wanted, go to school where they wanted, etc. The facts did not show that Mexican Americans were equal. They showed they weren't. And so they rejected. Chicanos began to reject what the Mexican American Studies program was teaching us, that we were just like anybody else. That they looked around and they saw that even though we helped John F. Kennedy get elected by going out and registering tons and tons of Latinos, they ignored us. They just got into power and said, yeah, thanks. And then we're like, wait a minute, what about us? Who? Sorry. Click. Hang up the phone. Unfriend. So the Chicanos were continuing to see things that didn't happen, that weren't good. And they made a radical departure towards this new identity. We talked about this. Crystal City, Texas needs to be in your final. Crystal City, Texas needs to be in your final. Crystal City, Texas needs to be in your final. Crystal City, Texas needs to be in your final. A town that was overwhelmingly Latinos being run by a minority of whites. Finally, they got sick of it and they changed it. Corky Gonzalez created in Denver a crusade for justice dealing with the urban issues of Chicanos. Reyes Lopez Tijerina, La Alianza, dealing with land grant issues. Students began to organize with Mexican American Youth Organization, United Mexican American Students, Mexican American Student Association, etc. Farm workers began to fight for the rights that they believed they should have. People began to respond through poetry. Yo soy Joaquin, or I am Joaquin. They began to write about it. There was blowouts. Students realized that they needed to do something if they ever wanted to learn, like what you're learning right now. So they walked out of their classes and said, we're not coming back until you say, A, you're not going to treat us like shit, and B, we can learn about ourselves. That's all starting down the road. And as that began to move, that new ideology had to be put into place. Let's take a peek at what did that mean if they were looking at a new ideology. And what is the new ideology? Chicanismo. That's what it's called, Chicanismo. This kind of understanding that we are all Chicanos, not just Mexicans, people who are poor, working, indigenous community-centered people who are from El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, wherever you're from, Africa, Asia, Vietnam, Ireland, it doesn't matter. It's an ideology. It's an understanding. Too long have people been trying to misrepresent and teach you something wrong. Chicano does not mean Mexicans born in the United States. Somebody lied to you. Somebody lied to you. And I'm trying to straighten you out now. It's an ideology, a political understanding of the world that accepts people who do not think that getting rich and fucking other people over and destroying the earth for all of its resources is the best way to live. As a matter of fact, it's okay to live poor. It's okay to only take what you need. It's okay to work. It's okay to have a job that's this or that or that or this. We don't all have to be the big shot. We can all be happy with what we've been given, and we can ask that when we are in those positions to be respected. We have to do that ourselves. The people who own the businesses aren't going to respect you and me at the bottom. We have to tell them, just because you're at the top, you're not better than me. Your shit still stinks. You should respect the fact that I do this job, whatever it is, and I am a part of making your business run. So quit treating me like shit. Stop it. It's difficult. It's difficult. I remember when my son was little, he would watch for the garbage man. And that was probably one of his first heroes, was the garbage man. He loved to see the garbage man. And then he wanted to be a garbage man. I told him, you can be whatever you want to be, son, as long as you're two things: happy and you're helpful to other human beings on this earth. I will always respect. Then he wanted to be the gardener. El Señor is what he called him. El Señor would come, and I said, there's a Señor right there. He's coming. And he'd run out. He'd want to have a leaf blower. What's wrong with somebody who comes around? There's nothing wrong with these jobs. We have made them shit jobs. We have decided that somehow we're better because we're professors or whatever. We're no better than any person on this earth, whether it's a mom who stays home and takes care of her children and teaches them the good things of this earth so that they are good people and grow up in a good way, or whether you're a multimillionaire person. You're a person. Quit disrespecting others. So the Chicanismo ideology has no Mexican or Latino or Hispanic or rich or poor. It just means people who believe as working, poor, indigenous people, you're okay. We're brothers and sisters. We only take what we need, and we make sure that others get and are taken care of. That's a rejection of American ideologies, isn't it? So the first thing they had to do is they had to reject in our own community, those who were telling us to become white. That's a hard call. They had to literally say, we are going to reject what you've been teaching us, Mexican Americans. It's not working. They don't let us go to the same schools, even though we're trying to be like them. They don't let us live in their neighborhoods, even though we're trying to be like them. They don't let us get jobs. They don't. What are you saying? Why should we keep doing that? Why don't we turn inward and say, be proud of who we are? Forget the assimilation, claim a new identity. And this new identity of Chicanismo was one that began to pull our community together to help itself. Letter B, they had to reject the American understanding of capitalism. That's a huge problem for many of my students. Huge problem. The idea that you've been taught, and I'm not telling you right, I'm not telling you you're wrong. So don't think I'm coming at you and saying you're wrong and you don't know what the fuck you're doing. I'm not. Here's what I'm saying. They realized that if they were going to maintain the constructs of the ideology of Chicanismo, poor, working class, indigenous, community-centered people, you can't have capitalism. You can't. Matter of fact, I read a book one time, and the opening statement Powerful statement. Stayed with me all these years. I was in college. As a matter of fact, I was mostly probably your age. I was around 20 years old. And I remember I read this book, and it was so powerful that it stayed with me. You cannot be both a capitalist nation and a Christian nation. For capitalism is all taking, and Christianity is all giving. Let me repeat that one more time. I want you to think about that. You cannot be both a capitalist nation and a Christian nation. For capitalism is all taking, and Christianity is all giving. After I read that, I prayed on that for hours, that I would keep that in my spirit and my soul. And just as the Chicanos have questioned and begun to and talked about giving away and pushing away capitalism as an ideal, right? So must we think about that. It'll be your choice in the end. If you think that only those people who could afford a home should have a home, that's your business. I'm never going to tell you what to do in your life. That's your business. But I'm going to let you know that in my world, women and children, veterans, elders, people dying in the streets that's terrible. That's a shameful representation of my country. This is my country. And I allow that in my country. Literally, children starving and dying in the streets of our region right here every fucking day, so that others can have billions. Because remember, the only reason they don't have a home, the only reason they don't have food, the only reason they don't have medicine, the only reason they don't have any of the things they need is because they can't afford it. And you and I have agreed that only those who can afford it should ever get it. Until we disagree with that capitalist ideology of everything should be bought and sold in the market system, until you and I decide to stand against that, women and children, veterans and elders, poor people of different colors will die in the streets. And we'll accept it as long as we get our share of what we should be able to get as capitalist nation. They wrote El Plan Espiritual de Aslan. I don't know how many are familiar with El Plan. It's available to you. You can go online and look it up. I'm trying to see if I have a copy anywhere close by that I can read for you, at least part of it. Let me see if I got it. Oh, I do have it. Let me see if I can read to you so you know what was going on in their minds and why they were saying what they were saying. El Plan Espiritual de Aslan, in the spirit of a new people that is conscious not only and proud of its own historical heritage, but also of the brutal gringo invasion of our territory. We, the Chicano inhabitants and civilizers of these northern lands of Aslan, from whence our forefathers came, reclaiming the land of our birth and consecrating the determination of our people of the sun, declare that the call of our blood is our power, our responsibility, and our inevitable destiny. We are free and sovereign to determine the tasks which are justly called for by our house, our land, the sweat of our brows and of our hearts. This is Aslan, to those who plant the seeds, who water the fields, who gather the crops, not the foreign Europeans. We do not recognize the capricious frontiers on this bronze continent. Brotherhood unites us, and love for our brothers makes us a people whose time has come and who struggle against the foreign gaucho who exploits our riches and destroys our culture. With our hearts in our hands in the soil, we declare the independence of this mestizo nation. We are a bronze people with a bronze culture. Before the world, before all of North America, before all of our brothers and sisters on this bronze continent, we are a nation. We are a nation of free pueblos, we are Aslan. They were beginning to project that everybody on this continent, El Salvadoreños, Guatemalan people, Nicaraguan people, you are all part of one nation. We are the working, poor, indigenous people, and we stand together, not apart. That was dangerous, as you're going to see in a minute. That was a dangerous thing for them to do. Once they started claiming this so-called territory of Southwest United States and the continent of North America and South and Central America is ours, this is gonna need to be defined. Then, how do you do that? What are you really saying? And they began to reclaim their identity. If you look on page 96 and 97 on the book that is called Youth, Identity, and Power, right? The Youth, Identity, and Power book. Make sure that's the one you're looking at. If you look on page 96 and 97, we can begin to see what I talked about last time. That Chicanismo was once considered a pejorative, it was a class bound. It's on page 96, a class bound adjective. That's become now the root of our new idea. Chicanismo at the bottom of page 96 to the top of 97 involves a crucial political distinction, a political consciousness. I'm reading on page 96 at the bottom, between a Mexican American and a Chicano mentality. The Mexican American, a person who lacks respect for their own culture and their own ethnic heritage. Unsure of that, they seek to assimilate, to find their way out of a degraded position in society. Consequently, they remain politically ineffective. In contrast, Chicanos and Chicanismo reflects self-respect, pride in one's own ethnic and cultural background. Chicano acts as the confidence of the range of alternatives in the political world. When you begin to talk about Chicanismo, you're offering people in the community an alternative to what they've been told about themselves and how they are to deal with this world. When you offer them that alternative, they have the ability to think. They're not stupid. Our people are not dumbasses. We don't have to wait for white people to tell us how to fucking live. We can actually make distinctions on how we would like to live. Do we want to tear down the forests? Do we want to pollute the water? Do we want to treat women as second-class citizens? Do we want to cage up undocumented people? Do we want to see black people shot on the streets? There's a whole thing that we can ask ourselves. And if the answer is no, then we don't just sit there. We create new paradigms of thinking. We begin to reclaim our identity. Our identity was once of indigenous background, where women were equal to men, where there was no racial structure, where the earth was respected and you took what you need, where every season was respected. The animals were respected. They were revered. They were on our calendar. We had ceremonies for those animals. We had ceremonies for the mountains and the sun and the moon. We knew the role that humans played was only one role in the whole universe, not the entire universe. Reclaiming our identity was important. Somebody had been stealing it for a long time. Chicanismo, I'm reading on page 97. Chicanismo simply embodies the ancient truth. Now, remember, this was written in 1960. So they're going to use male pronouns, but we know today. Chicanismo simply embodies the ancient truth that man is never closer to his true self as when he is close to his community. Chicanismo draws its faith and strength upon two, write these down, upon two main sources. People often ask me, Mr. Gomez, how do I know if I'm doing things right? I mean, how do I know? And I'm not here to tell you. I'm not God. How would I know? How do I guide myself? With these two principles. Number one, from the just struggle of our people. If you are struggling to support your and our people, that doesn't mean Mexican. That doesn't mean Salvadoreños. That doesn't mean Guatemala. It means poor, working class, indigenous, community-centered people. If you are fighting that cause, that's a just cause. And number two, if it's from an objective analysis of our community's strategic needs, that's the right thing to do. So the two things that I measure myself, or you can, or all of us can measure ourselves according to Chicanos is A, are we only doing this for ourselves, or are we doing it also with our community in mind? For instance, Mr. Gomez went and got a degree. I could have just done that for myself. Or did I get this degree to come back and teach others their role in humankind to help others? Every day I thought about that. I did. I can remember I had a African American female, the only African American female I ever had in 15 years of college as a professor. Her name was Maddie Moon, and she taught U.S. history. And one day she said to the class, I know why you're all here. You're all here just so you can get out and get a good job and make a lot of money. And I remember raising my hand. She said, yes, Mr. Gomez. And I said, Professor, I'm not here. She said, well, why are you here? I said, really? I just want to learn. And I hope someday that what I learn, I can share with others and make a better place of this earth. She said, the first time in 30 years anybody's ever said that. And after class, her and I talked for a while. She became a close friend of mine and helped me for many years. I think she's passed on now. God rest her soul. But we are taught that the education we're given is for us to keep so that we can make money, buy a nice house, go on vacation, get good cars, get good clothing, get good medicine, etc. We're not taught that the education we are given is partially belongs to somebody else. Chicanos are going to say that. Native American people are going to say that. You weren't given something for you to hog it and keep it to yourself. You were given something by the universe, by God, by whatever you believe, by the creator, whatever it is you were given that with the responsibility to help, to create change. Chicanismo is a way of life, a reaffirmation of what our purpose is. And they began to talk about this, and the students began to say, wait a minute, we need to bring all of our students across the country together so we all are on the same page, so that we all remind ourselves every meeting, a mecha every week, or every meeting of mecha every month in the central or in the regional or in the state or in the nationals. What is our purpose? Realigning, keeping ourselves. Mecha began to pull in Mayo, Masa, Umas, all these, and created one overarching movement, Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, the Chicano student movement of Aztlán, that they would bring all of us together. And now it's international. Matches all across the world, Russia, Latin America, United States, Europe. And the main idea is that we're all inclusive. As Chicanos, we are all inclusive. No one is left out. That's what community means. You can't say we're all a part of a community, let's say the San Bernardino Valley College community. All of us are a part of a community except the people who are here who are gay. You can't say that. Then it's not really a community. It's an exclusive group. Inclusivity. Community is all inclusive. Let me repeat that. Community is all inclusive. Community means all inclusive. So if you've got a problem with Black brothers and sisters, then you probably can't be a Chicano right now. You have to deal with whatever the fucking your problem is. If you got a problem with my brothers and sisters from El Salvador because you're from Mexico, you better fucking check yourself. You got an issue. You better deal with it. Community and the root of Chicanismo, knowing that we are a part of a community. We have to reject those old ideas. We have to continue to push for complete community, complete understanding that no child in my community should not have food. I don't care if mine has every kind of food in the world. I don't care if my son's sitting at a table with 300 pizzas, 600 chickens, 3,000 pupusas, 7,000 tamales. It's still my duty to make sure that the children in this community, because they're all a part of us, have food too. If not, I'm not doing my role. If not, I'm buying into the old stuff, capitalism. I'm buying into exclusivity. Only these people get homes and these people don't. Why? Well, Bobby, because they're lazy niggers. And niggers don't like to work, Bobby. Well, Bobby, because they're Mexicans. And they come across the border and steal everything from our people. Well, Bobby, because they're women and women are, well, Bobby, right? You have an excuse? Do you? I'm asking you in your heart. Do you have an excuse why you can't accept community means everybody and all inclusive? Chicanos are going to ask you to think about that. They began to reach out across cultural lines, across religious lines, across all kinds of lines. And that was a problem. That was a threat. And as we see here in the next one, that's going to cause a situation. Sorry about that. When I get emotional, sometimes my nose starts to get a little plugged there. There began movements now against the Chicanos. On page 103, you can look at COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program of the United States that undermined the Native American movement, known as AIM, American Indian Movement, that undermined the Black Panther movement, that undermined so many different movements. The United States government literally had an entire program called COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program, in which they sent brown people or black people or whatever into these groups to help destroy them. In some cases, even murder the leaders of these people or imprison them. Chicano moratorium, the hundreds and thousands, I think it was 30,000 people who gathered at Laguna Park in Los Angeles. And they said the war is really not good for Chicanos. We're dying at a higher rate than anybody else. And we should say something about it. We should stand up for our brothers and sisters who are dying. And so they did. They had a big rally. They met at the park, and then the police came and shot and beat and gassed and arrested, and even a few people died. They began to attack Chicano studies programs. They said, oh, yeah, now that you're here, it's only because you're brown. You're really not that smart. We let you in. You let me in? What do you mean you let me in, motherfucker? I passed every fucking class that you have ever given me. You let me in as if it's yours? Oh, that's right. It's not inclusive, it's exclusive. You and I have bought into this system, haven't we? Listen to what I'm asking you, young people. You've bought and I've bought into the system that education is exclusive. Only those who belong here, and the rest of us don't. And now we've got, it used to be that this wasn't a group, Jews weren't allowed. Now it used to be, or back in the day, was the American Indians weren't allowed, blacks. Then it was women weren't. It was other. Then all of a sudden, okay, well, they could come in, but only a certain amount. And then they have to pass this test, and then only, quotas. The attacks on Chicano studies, as you're going to watch in this video, continue to today. The understanding that we should not be here, we don't belong here, has been in their heads since the very first day. And some of you may think that. I know there was a point when I walked into classroom after classroom after classroom. I went to school for 26 years, from kindergarten through my PhD classes. And I remember walking in year after year and being the only brown person there, or one of 2 or 3 brown people there. And that all the professors, none of them looked like me. All the professors, none of them thought like me. None of them thought like me. That's important. I was in a class for my graduate program, and we read a book called Chant's Rebellion. Chants meaning, screaming out loud stuff. Chant's Rebellion. And it was about Jewish and Italian women and men in New York City who fought as working poor people so that their children and they could have a home and eat. I mean, they were dying in the streets by the thousands. Nobody was saying anything. And I remember reading the book, and it was powerful because my grandmother worked in some of these same types of businesses. And I believe she was probably raped by the owners, and I believe she was beaten by them. And her sisters were too. I'm pretty sure. Because they talked stories, but they wouldn't give details, Women, it's hard, right? Anyway, at the end of the book, I was just like empowered that this book talked about people like my family. And the professor on the date of the book discussion brought it in, and he said, okay, get out your books. And we did. He said, and he held the book up. He said, this is a book about losers. This is a book about working poor people, the losers in our society. And we really have to recognize that. And I almost fucking flipped out, go kick his fucking ass. He's going to literally say to the class, some of us who are not rich or didn't come from rich backgrounds, and we were working our asses off to pay tuition to be there. When I was at community college, I worked 70 hours a week. 70. I worked 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Then I'd go to school, go back to work, go to school. Some of you. Then I went to Cal State. I worked 50 hours, 2 jobs, different ones, so I could my classes in between. And this motherfucker is going to tell me this is a book about losers, the working class, the poor. But that's his perspective. His father had gone to Yale. He had gone to Yale. His great-grandfather had gone to Yale. They never worked days in their lives. They just got in classrooms and talked about books. And they thought because they could do that, their shit didn't stink and they were better than the rest of us. We can't forget that. We can't forget that we are none of us better than any other. And they attacked us and attacked us and attacked us. The biggest attack is on page 331 of your Acuna book, not Youth Identity Power, but Acuna. And that is that they realized what was happening. They realized that the brown people had begun to unite with other brown and other types of poor people and were creating a reality that was more reflective of who they were. That's a huge problem. And so they had to find a way to fight back. I'm going to show you on a piece of paper what began to happen and how they did that, because it's interesting. You and I, and our age, we might not know or think about what's happening. So I'm going to go to my whiteboard of time here, which is just a piece of paper I'm going to draw. And I'm going to tell you that at a certain point, there were American values. They were seen as the prime, if you will. That's what everybody should do. That's who we are. So we're going to call those the American dream, the American values, okay? The American dream. Anybody, put your microphone on. What are some of the things associated with the American dream? If you could think about, what are some of the things associated with the American dream? Anybody out there?
Working.
You think that the rich people on top think that the American dream is you should be able to work all your life? I don't think so. What is the American dream? If you're living the American dream, what do you have? Give me a couple things that you might have.
Having a lot of money and a big
A
house.
lot of money. So I'm going to put a big dollar sign. They believe that you've accomplished the American dream, not because you've got, $20 to go to the movies. You got billions like the Trumps, right? And that's why he thinks he's better than us, because we haven't yet accomplished what he has. Okay, what else do they have to have? What else besides big money? Anything else? Do they live in trailer parks, most of the Trumps? Do they live in apartment buildings? Where do most of the Trumps live?
Mansions.
Huge houses, big houses. They love it. I'm going to put the big H. So big houses, big money. Do they drive around in Priuses?
No.
Oh, so what do they got?
Fancy name brand
Fancy
cars.
cars. Yeah, fancy cars and fancy things. We'll just put fancy cars as one of. So they like big money, big houses, fancy cars, fancy clothes. That shows people that you've done what? You've done what? You made it. American dream. So if that's in the United States is value, and I would argue it is there anybody who wants to argue that's not in the American values? I'll listen to you, but I don't think we can argue that that's not a part of what it means to be a true American, right? To have these big houses and big money and big cars and good clothes and all, to basically have everything and then more. because some of these people don't have one house. They don't have two houses. They don't have three. They have as many houses as they can. One in Florida, one in New York, one in LA, one in Aspen, Colorado for skiing, one in Acapulco, one in Paris. They've got a condo over there. I've got a little flat in London. I've got a house in Tokyo. Am I making this up? If I'm making it up, stop me. Because I want to make sure that you think what I'm saying is real. If you don't, you have the right to stop me. You can say, Mr. Gomez, I think you're exaggerating. I don't think that the American dream is that people have all big monies and they have big cars and they have all these houses and they have all this clothing. You can say no, but I think that's true. You know it's true. And one of the last ones is a college education. Yes or no? Yes?
Yes.
So higher education is important. So I'm going to put higher ed at the top, H-Ed. So that's an important thing. Why? Because it's assumed that if you have higher education, you're going to make lots of what?
Money.
You're going to make lots of money. Maybe even your parents told you that. Maybe even your parents told you that. I know that in my lifetime, my parents and my teachers and my counselors told me that you need to go to college. They didn't say so you're a good person. They said you need to go to college, and they didn't say so that you could help others. They said you need to go to college, and they didn't say it so that the world will be a better place. They said you need to go to college, not because you're going to do the things that are necessary to alleviate the problems in your community. You need to go to college because someday you need to make a lot of money so that you can get the things you need. They've associated my mom and dad, maybe even you. Maybe you're telling your children the same thing. You're telling them this. You're not thinking about it consciously, but you think to yourself that if your child can get the best education and the best job and make the most money, get the better house, to get the better car, to get the better insurance, to get the better vacation, then they've succeeded. Then they've succeeded. Think about it. Think about what you teach. Think about what you understand. Think about what you're promoting. Think about that for a second. What if they're not good people, but they have a lot of money, a lot of power, Mr. Trump? You call people negative names. You disrespect women openly. But you have a nice house. Come on, Ed. Come on. You got to admit it. He's got a nice house. As a matter of fact, he's got a lot of them. You got to admit that he's got a lot of money. He calls people from Central America shithole nation, shithole people, criminals, rapists. Yeah, but come on, he's got some nice cars. Have you ever seen his cars? He's got a good collection of cars. He's got a big bank account. Yeah, but you just talked about women like that. How many of you remember his famous Tic Tac? Anybody remember the famous Tic Tac statement he made? You want to Google it sometime? What did he say? Tell your daughters it's okay. I want you to listen to what he said, but because he has money and nice houses and nice bank accounts and he has good it's okay, right? It's a part of the American value. It's been there for a long time. Where does Chicanismo fit on this chart? Anybody? Put your mic. Where does it fit? Where can I put that in?
Nowhere.
Nowhere. Good answer, Jorgina. Best fucking answer. So it's not a part of the norm, meaning normal. It's outside of the norm. And what does it mean to be outside of the norm or the normal? It means to be what? If you're not normal, you are abnormal.
Abnormal.
Abnormal, that's right. Outside of the norm are things like Chicanismo, the idea that we are all brothers and sisters, that we should only take what we need, that you and I can actually work together to create a better society, not just for our children, but for Black brothers and sisters, brown brothers and sisters, white brothers and sisters, poor Asian brothers and sisters, poor Native American. We don't see that. We don't have to have the color. We can just say, A general understanding of Chicanismo is all children deserve blank. We don't say only Mexican, or you're not a Chicano. You don't understand. We don't say only ones from Guatemala. We don't say the only the best ones from El Salvador. We say blank. That's it. All. We are community, all inclusive. Is Chicanismo then a friendly concept to those who want to take everything for themselves and are teaching that through the universities and are teaching that to their children? Is that a friendly or an unfriendly idea then? Friendly or unfriendly? Is Chicanismo friendly to the American norms or not friendly?
Not friendly.
Not friendly. What will you do as an American if something's not what America wants? Anybody? What will Americans do when something's not the way America wants it? Will they just like throw a party for you and say, okay, you're all right, you can do that, it's okay? Or will they try to stop it at any means? Which one? Accept and bring it in
at any means.
Stop it at any means. We've seen that throughout American history. You think I'm lying? Think about it for a moment. American Indian people were here thousands and thousands and thousands of years before white people. What's the first thing the white people did to the American Indian people? Help me. Anybody, what do they do?
Take their land.
Colonize.
Colonize, remove them, kill them, take their land, and then try to take their children and put them in boarding schools. How many are familiar with boarding schools? Tell me if you know what a boarding school is for American Indians. Anybody know what a boarding school is for American Indians? Nobody knows what a boarding school is? They took the children at age 3 and 4 out of their homes, sent them thousands of miles away, put them in white schools, and kept them there so that the moms and dads could never see them until they were 21 or 22 years old. Let me just bring it up. I didn't know you guys didn't know this. I'm just going to Google real quick. Bring up boarding schools. Boarding schools in USA. Oh, didn't come up. Boarding schools in. So these are the rich white ones, right? Look at how everybody's happy. Now let me show you the Native American ones. Here's the Native American ones, where they put the
We
children.
can't see.
Oh, sorry, I didn't share my screen. Did I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me. Give me a second. I'll get that for you. Give me 1 second. I got to try to figure out how do I get this to be. All right. Let me go here. Share the screen. I forgot I took the share out. Here's the boarding schools for Indian people. They marched these children like they were pieces of military. You know, they took them away from their parents, made them live in areas that were not normal to them, worked them to their bones, forced them to take American values, cut their hair, and become American. If they didn't do it, they would put them in punishing homes and stuff like that. They would take these children and make them into little white children, basically. They taught them not to be themselves, not to be themselves. They worked them in the fields for free so that they could live there and be told they were stupid. They made them reject their own culture and become something else. See how the ones in the back have the Indian hair? They lived away from their mothers and fathers like it was a military base. Every morning they were forced to march. The girls were forced to do certain things. This is all U.S. history. They would go and get them out of the families, and the families stopped them. They shot them and killed them. And by the way, there's still boarding schools today. There's one in Riverside, California. It's called Sherman Indian High School. You can look it up at your own time. Sherman Indian High School. They're there. You can see it. So, why am I bringing this up? Because these ideas that you and I are talking about are foreign. And so they began to attack by creating a new identity. They knew that some of us would possibly come back to the so-called middle circle here if we gave them some treats and some levels of kind of like, you're better than those guys. You're not really like those Mexicans. And if you do that, they'll see you in a different light. My daughter, excuse me, my granddaughter, my goddaughter, I don't have a granddaughter. My goddaughter is named Megan. I met her mother when I was 7 years old. We went to school together. Megan's mother has blonde hair and blue eyes. Megan's father has a middle name of Jarl, which means King of the Vikings. Megan is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed young lady. When she was going to be born, her mother said, "Would you be her godfather?" And I said, "Of course. Colors don't mean anything to me." But I'm telling you the story because Megan's father and Megan's mother loved me enough to give me both their son and their daughter as their godfather. And if anything happened, I would, back in those days, now Megan's almost 30, I would have been her father. I remember shortly after becoming Megan's godfather, I was in the car with Keith. That was his name, Keith. And Keith was telling the story. And in the story, he stopped and said something about the Mexicans. And I was like, what? He's like, the Mexicans, blah, blah, blah. And I said, ho, Keith, what? He said, what, Ed, what? I said, Keith, hello. Why are you talking about He said, oh, Ed, you're not really Mexican. You know what I mean. And he went back into the story. I said, whoa, Keith, stop. What do you mean? My dad's from Mexico, literally. He literally immigrated here. He said, well, you know what I mean. I said, no, I don't. Would you tell me what you mean when you say those Mexicans? And this is exact quote. Remember, he loves me enough to give me his blonde-haired, blue-eyed daughter and son because he trusts in, he said, the Mexicans who are the dirty ones living in a broken down bus. There's like 20 or 30 of them, and they live in. Well, Keith and I had a long discussion that day, and it wasn't very good for Keith's ears to hear what the fuck I was about to tell him. Keith loves me to this day. I still consider him my brother, and he considers me his brother. But guess what? His imagery of what it means to be a Mexican has been influenced by this society. And just like those people, they began to realize they had to do something. And so they started to pull away different people to come back in here. And if they came in, Ted Cruz, if they came in, Marco Rubio, if they came in, these possible dreams could be theirs. But they had to reject this. They had to say that that was bullshit. Everybody, you should know who Ted Cruz is. You should know who Marco Rubio is. These are Latino Mexicano descended people who are Texas and Florida senators and representatives who believe that immigration is good. The policies that we beat down our brown people, that we put them in cages, that we should have bigger walls. We should have more police officers. We should have more detention centers. We should have more. They should never be allowed to come to this country. Hispanic becomes the underlying, if you will, we're going to see, and I'm going to read to you in a moment, becomes the underlying new identity that the right-wing conservative people are going to put in place. As a matter of fact, as you see on the screen, Hispanic was created by a Republican president on page 331 of the Occupied America. Let me read for you. Under the section that is called The Politics of Cynicism, Nixon's Hispanic Strategy. The election was important in 1968. Americans elected Herbert Humphrey. 90% of the Mexican vote went to him. However, Nixon realized that if he had only received 5% more of the Chicano vote, Mexican vote in Texas, he could have carried Texas and won the election. The next year, President Nixon replaced the interagency on the Committee for Mexican American Affairs. He created a new one called Cabinet Committee on Opportunities for Spanish-Speaking People. Nixon appointed Martin Castillo as the head of the committee. He then created NEDA, National Economic Development Association. He tied the organization's funding directly to promoting homes in low-income areas. By 1972, Nixon had appointed 50 Chicano Latinos to federal posts. Ramona Manuelos of Los Angeles, a food manufacturer. They became known as the Brown Mafia. They worked with people like Alex Armendez in South Bend, Indiana, who was on the committee to reelect the president, otherwise known as CREEP. Nixon expected to get 20% of the Latino vote in the next election. As a matter of fact, are you listening, students? As a matter of fact, the Republicans made it clear that if they did not get 20% of the vote, they would cut all funding to all Latino programs. Nixon received 31% of the vote, yet he dismantled the programs on poverty that helped Chicanos. So the Republicans come in and they create a new identity that had never been discovered before. Now, two things have to be talked about before we get into this. Number one, how many of you knew that? And number two, how many of you call yourself Hispanic now knowing that it was created by the fucking people in the Republican Party not to help us, but to undermine us and to destroy the Chicano movement by making us think we were a part of their plan, when in fact what they were doing is pulling us out of our plan, putting us back into the way they like the world, and we were not even challenging it. Most of my students have never even known that the term Hispanic was used as an attack on the Chicano movement to destroy what we had created by bringing ourselves together as poor, working class, indigenous people. Instead, reopening up the old ideas that you should be rich, have big houses, big money, big cars, power, and all that shit that comes with being a true American. Basically is reaffirming assimilation, but at a whole different level. Now, this becomes insidious because they're doing it for two reasons. Number one, economics. They were watching the census grow. Anybody, put your microphone on. What is the census? Anybody? What is the census?
Isn't that the count of people in, I don't know if it's like certain, like throughout the state, or certain people like Mexican people, American people, white people?
Every 10 years, everybody in the whole country has to be counted. And then they count how many of them are Black, how many of them are Latino, or in this case, Hispanic, how many of them are American Indian, how many of them are high school educated, how many are... Every 10 years, 2020, 2030, 24, every 10 years, the government goes out and counts every person in every house to see how many people live in our country, what education is the general education level, what amount of money are most people making, how many cars do most people have, what ethnic background are most people, what racial background are most people. This is called a census. It's been going on since the Greeks, way before Jesus Christ, thousands of years before Jesus. The Greeks went every 10 years and counted everybody in their country. It's called a census. And the census was creating a new problem for white people. Anybody want to take a guess? What did white people see as they began to look at the population growing 1960, 70, 80, 90, 2000? What do you think they saw?
Brown people.
More brown people than ever before. Is that good news or bad news for the white population of control?
Bad news.
Very bad news. It's not so bad if the little fucking brownies stay in their place. You see what I'm saying? It's not so bad if we can just use them to clean the toilets and watch my babies and stuff. But what about they started talking about this? They started talking about, we don't need big money. We don't need big houses. We will only take what we need. We will organize with Guatemalan people. We'll organize with Nicaraguan people. We'll organize with Native American people. We'll organize with Black brothers. We'll organize with poor white brothers and sisters. We will make a community all inclusive. Let me ask a question. Is this way of living in America inclusive or exclusive? Everybody's in or everybody is not in? Which one?
Exclusive.
100% exclusive, isn't it, Marisol? People will get angry. Mr. Gomez says, "Oh, you hate white people." No. Stop. I just told you my goddaughter, I'd give my life for her, and my godsons. They're white, blonde. Don't give me that bullshit. I hate white people. Here's what I want to ask you. In this country's history, think about this, all of you. In this country's history, 1776, when it began, at the very beginning of this country, were white people all equal with everybody else? In other words, were black people equal to whites? Yes or no? Anybody help me out? Yes or no?
No,
Were Indians equal to whites? Yes or no?
no,
Were Asians equal to whites? Yes or no?
no,
Were women equal to men? Yes or no?
no,
Were poor people equal to rich people? Yes or no?
no,
Were immigrants equal to citizens? Yes or no?
no,
So at the beginning, it wasn't there. Let's go up to 1865. That's the end of the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War, were women equal to men? Yes or no? Were blacks equal to yes or no? Were Indians equal? Yes or no? Were undocumented people? Were LGBTQ? What's the answer to all those?
no,
No. Let's go to 1960, the time of the civil rights. Were women equal to men? Were blacks equal to whites? Were immigrants equal to citizens? Were LGBTQ? What's the answer to all those? What's the answer to all those? No. So you got 1776 to 1876, 100 years of no. You got 1876 to 1970, 100 years of no. We're in 2023 right now. Are black people equal completely with white people? I doubt that. Are immigrant people equal to the citizens of this? I don't see that. Are women equal to men? No. Are LGBTQ plus? No. You want me to keep? So it's not a mistake in America. It's actually America. It's not a mistake in America, inequality. It actually is America. It's not a mistake in America. It is a part of America. Inequality has always been a part of our society, and it still is. And if something happens for more than 1 year, 2 year, 10 year, 20, 100, 200, something's happened for more than 250 years in a country's history. In other words, the whole time it existed. Don't tell me it's a fucking mistake. It's not a mistake. It's what you've taught. And people can only think in the way they've been taught to think. So now we got a problem. What's the problem? We got a group of people who are saying, hey, poor black people. Hey, poor white people. Hey, poor Latino people. Hey, poor Indian people. Hey, poor Middle Eastern people. Come on over. We have a new way of thinking. It's called Chicano. We're going to help each other. We don't take more than what we need. Women are equal to men. Children are precious. The earth is, precious. That's got to stop. Because if not, they can't exploit us economically in every way possible. They can't make us work to our bones, till our hands are falling apart. They can't rush their products into our community and fuck us into buying it. Yesterday or last week with Black Friday, how many of our community members went out and sat in front of fucking stores all day waiting for the opportunity? Some maybe overnight so they could be the first one in the store to get everything they wanted. That's the perfect person in this world. They love that guy. What about the guy who didn't buy anything like Mr. Gomez because I actually left? I actually left this region like I do every single year. So I never have to even think about Black Friday. And I go out to the reservation and I attend ceremony and I pray. That's what I do every single Thanksgiving. Or if I can't get out there because of something, then I go down to literally right here in San Bernardino, the branding iron. Everybody knows the branding iron. It's right there on E Street. I go to the branding iron and I give out food and clothing all day to the poor. Because to me, Black Fridays, Thanksgiving, that's a trap if you don't watch it. Be careful. And they know that. If they know that unless they get you back into the circle, you might find a different way of existing. Politically, they were counting our votes. They were counting our votes. And they knew that if they didn't control the amount of growth in the brown community, in other words, bringing us back into by giving us little treats, by giving us a phone that's got more pixels this year than last year, by giving us apps that we can play with all day, by giving us Black Friday sales that if you don't go now, you'll never get it. But don't worry, if you don't have any credit, we'll give you more credit. We'll put you more in debt for the rest of your life. Don't worry. At least you got a new TV. Don't worry. At least you got a new refrigerator. Don't worry. At least you got everything, everything and more. They knew that politically our numbers were also growing. We weren't just an economic force to be reckoned with our money, but we could literally stop and change votes. Anybody remember Crystal City, Texas? I told you. Go back and look at it. Crystal City, Texas. The brown people rose up and said, we've had enough of this. And because they had more numbers, they were able to run all the white people out and vote all brown people in. Now, that doesn't mean that brown people are good people. You and I need to remember that. Just because somebody's brown doesn't make them part of Marco Rubio. Just because somebody's brown, Ted Cruz. Just because somebody's brown doesn't make them down with us. So we have to be very careful about that. But we have to recognize that if we do have the same goals, and we are united as brothers and sisters, and we do recognize that we shouldn't take more than what we need, and that we are blessed when we have what we have, but others still need that, we can change the policies of our towns, of our school boards. We can change the policies of this country and make this a better world by our own understandings, not by the understandings of others. Rejecting, remember the old, and becoming a new way of thinking. Political votes began to change, and that was very scary for them. They had to get that under control. And how did they do it? They created a new identity known as Hispanic. And then they used that treats among the rich, so-called whatever, Latino Hispanics. They let those people control. So what happened? Some of us went in here, and the ones out here were seen as abnormal. And the people in here were seen as normal because they wanted houses, because they wanted cars, because they wanted money, because they wanted big power. That's the right thing to want, Gomez. What's wrong with you? And what happened to the Gomezes who said, only take what you need? Spend part of your time. Spend part of your life. Spend part of your energy. Spend part of your education. Spend part, I'm not saying, but part of it helping others, creating better. Just a part. If every person on the earth just partially changed to help some part of the earth, what kind of a world could we live in? I'm sorry, I got off track. Take everything you want. Get everything you need. Take everything you want. Get everything you need. Don't listen to this crazy guy on the fucking screen. Matter of fact, block him out. Get rid of him. Stop his video. Don't let him stop. He's crazy. He's telling you to actually care for others. Fuck others. Take what you can do and be everything for yourself. Take everything for yourself. Don't listen to that crazy man. So what did they do? They marginalized us, didn't they? They pulled in as many as they could. And now today, when you say, hey, I'm Ed Gomez, who represents me? They say, oh, we've got all kinds of people Hispanic like you. Well, wait, I'm not Hispanic. Oh, yes, you are. Marco Rubio, he's your person. Ted Cruz, he's your person. Solis, Hilda Solis, they're your people. They're there. They already represent you. No, they don't. No, they don't. Because I'm abnormal. I don't have that view. I don't think that women are less than men, blacks are less than whites. I don't think that immigrants are unimportant to the citizens. I don't think that we should be, I don't have any of those views. I don't. Chicano says, reject those. New way, and continuing to teach that and let people know there's a possibility of changing. There's a huge possibility. That caused problems because what were we really teaching? Let's take a peek at that right now. What were we really teaching was really that you can do something different. What am I really teaching you on this screen? Some people would say I'm teaching you to hate white people. That's a fucking lie, and you know that. Anybody who's listening to my lectures, I've never said that. I've never once said that. I love all of our brothers and sisters on this earth. I would never say harm, hurt, or just what I hate is ideologies of greed. I hate ideologies of sexism and homophobia. I hate ideologies of hatred. I hate ideologies of economic disparity. I hate those. I don't know what color you are. You don't think there's people in my own family who think I'm cuckoo? You don't think there's people in my family who love fucking money and want to roll in it and suck it off as much as they can? You don't think there's people in my own family who want me to be fucking knocked on the head and taken away because I don't want to be a whatever they think the world should be because they want money and power? They're the same fucking genetics as me. So it has nothing to do with your color. Don't try to make this a racial issue. This is an issue of ideology and understanding and a commitment to humankind. The creation of this study had happened then. A new paradigm, a new way of thinking. Mexican American studies taught assimilation, like others. Do a true American, but it didn't apply to us. So the new groups began to come out. The very first one's La Raza Studies. On page 157, La Raza Studies. Some people think La Raza means the race, like brown people. That's not what it means. As a matter of fact, it's the absolute opposite. There was a guy who wrote a book called La Raza Cósmica. La Raza Cósmica. You can look the book up if you want. And his argument was Mexico and Central America was the perfect place on earth because Native American people, white people, and African people all had come together in one society. That had never happened before. There had never been a society in the world where brown, black, and white all came together. And if we use that, that gift that was given to us, we could become the cosmic race, the race where people would know things from Africa, know things from Europe, and know things from North and South America, and thereby change the whole world for better. So what was La Raza Studies? Well, there was really four main things that they said. Number one, we need to create a new system that's inclusive because the current one's exclusive. It only provided for excluded amounts of people. That's it. We have to provide now to get everybody included. We're going to destroy or reconstruct the whole system. Why? Because it's based on a pillar of exclusivity. It never was supposed to be for brown people. It never was supposed to be for poor people. It never was supposed to be for women. It never was supposed to be for black brothers and sisters. The higher education system was created by rich white men, for rich white men, maintained by rich white men, controlled by rich white men, dictated by rich white men, and it still is today. We have to tear it down, rebuild it. And when we rebuild it, we have to take the resources in our colleges and universities to create and to create solutions that face the problems of our community. Take a college, let's say San Maria Valley College. I'll say San Maria Valley College. What should the goal of this college be? Everything should come from this college outward to help San Bernardino be a better place. There shouldn't be the level of poverty. There shouldn't be the level of gun violence. There shouldn't be the level of homelessness. We should be taking every resource at Cal State, San Bernardino, and Valley College to help uprise this community. It should be problem solving. We should take our skills and create something better. How do you do that? You recruit in people who are Chicano. Now notice the term. What term is that? That doesn't say Hispanic. It says Chicano. That's what it says. It says Chicano. Take that term. People who know they're from working, people who know they're from poor, people that know they're from indigenous, value community center, and make them the students. Make them the faculty. Make them the staff. Make them the administrator. Do we have brown-skinned people who are students, faculty, staff, and administrator at Valley College? Absolutely. Matter of fact, we got a lot of them now. Didn't have them for a while, but we got them now. How many of them are Chicano? How many of them believe that poor, working class, indigenous, community centered is the way that we should be teaching and living and understanding? That's a different question. That's a different question. And I can tell you, not many. They're Hispanic for sure. Get that? They're Hispanic for sure. Getting that big house. They're Hispanic for sure. getting those fancy cars. They're Hispanic for sure. Seeking a big bank account. They're Hispanic for sure. But there's very few on this Valley campus, and even fewer at the Cal States, and even fewer at the UCs, and even fewer at the private colleges like USC and Stanford and Hayek. That's not part of the university teaching. You're not here to help others, bitches. You're here to make sure that you get every fucking thing you need. And don't fucking ever forget that. But there are a few of us. We're still hanging on. We're still fighting. And we're hoping you'll do the same thing. Then we will create classes that are relevant to what really happened to Chicanos. What were our experiences in our history, not somebody else's? Because if it's somebody else's, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. We're not going to remember. It's not going to be relevant to us. But it's relevant when I talk to you about the issues that you know happen in your family, have happened, and are continuing to happen in your family, in your community. Now you're going to see it. Tutorial programs to help our students. Maybe moms and dad never went to college, so they don't know what it means. And if you have nobody in your family, an older brother or mom and dad that's ever done it, you're on your own. When Mr. Gomez went, I have nobody for 500 years. Mom, dad, side, neither one. Go back 500 years. Not a single one of them went to college. You think they can tell me what it's like to go to college? You think they can help me with my college papers, my bibliographies, my citations, my research? You think they can help me? I'm not saying they're stupid. They're not trained in that. They're trained in something else. They'll do something else. What happens when you come home and your mom and dad know all that shit and you've got a question? Taken care of, boom. And you feel good. You feel good. You got that shit taken care of. I'm turning my paper in. I'm good. What happens when you come home, your mom and dad don't know that? You're on your own. You're fucking anxious. You're fucking shaking. You don't know if your paper's going to get fucked. You don't know if you're going to pass the class. You don't know if you're going to, what's going to happen if I don't, right? That's real. Research programs. We need to create some in our community that serve our community. Research is not for the purpose of just white people telling us that we're gang members or we're addiction levels higher in our community than other communities. We should be taking something that's important to our community and taking our resources to do research on it so that we can then publish that into a book or into some sort of a movie or a video to help our community. How do we talk about fentanyl? How do we, in our community, how do we talk about gang violence? Well, you could talk from this perspective or you could talk from this perspective. And then how do we research that and then put that out there for people to say, hey, wait a minute, this, what you've been told is not true. That's wrong. That's not correct. We need community cultural centers. Why? So that our children know that we're okay. We're often ashamed. We're ashamed of who we are. We don't want that when somebody comes to us and, hey, isn't that your, I've had numerous students, and I'm talking about brown students, who told me, and I'm not making this up, that they were ashamed of their own culture in middle school and grade school, that they would actually claim somebody else's culture just so people didn't know they were from El Salvador, or they didn't know they were from Guatemala or whatever. So they would just say, oh, I'm Mexican, or I'm, what they would, something, because we've been taught to be ashamed of who we are, even among ourselves. That's our own brown people against our own brown people, having us hate even our own selves. That we need to get rid of that. We need to stop that. We need to recognize that our people had stories, poems, music, dances, different types of medicines, different types of understandings of the earth that other people don't even know, and we could share that with them. I remember one day my son was not yet born, but he was on his way. And a friend of mine said, hey, we should probably go to a sweat lodge and pray about a few things. And I said, yeah, I need to for sure. So I want to talk, think about my son. He's coming. Now, the medicine man, I don't know if he knew or not. I don't think so. But when we were in there praying, one of the things he said is we should name our children after our own names, not other people's names. They've already stolen so much from us. And I thought about that for a long time. I prayed about it in that sweat lodge that day. Why? Because my name is Edward. Edward means English nobleman. I don't know if any of you can see me on the screen. I'll put my big ass head here in the middle. I'm probably not an English nobleman. Okay, I definitely am not. Why is my name English nobleman? Because we've assumed other people's identities. They've told us who we are. We've sucked it in and we've become what names they want us. That day I went home and I began to look up my son's name, and in the end, I named him in our people's language, my people's language, from Sonora, from the Yaqui Weme people. I named him, it means have wisdom, star. His name is that. He will have wisdom and he will be like a star in this world, brightness. His real name in our language. Some people say, why can't the teachers are not going to be able to say his name? Fuck the teachers. Fuck them. They should be able to say my people stuff. My people were here before them. And I should be able to say theirs because we're brothers and sisters on this earth. Just because somebody's teacher or whatever, they're going to say, fuck them. It's time for us to regain, reclaim, take back our names, take back our understandings of this earth. Women are equal to men. I never let anybody tell me otherwise. Elders are sacred and to be protected because they have knowledge. I never let anybody tell me otherwise. Every day is a good day to die for the children. Every day is a good day to die for the children. Every day is a good day to die for the children. And I'll never let anybody tell me otherwise. These are beliefs that come from our people. Or, oh, get a lot of money, get a big car, money, 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 get a big car. Look at your purse, it's some fucking Dooney Burke. You're so important. Get a lot of money, dedicate your life to those things. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Get a lot of money, and you'll be happy. Your choice, not mine. I'm teaching you a class on Chicano history. I'm telling you that at a certain point, the Chicanos began to question whether or not that way of living is the way they wanted to live, and they chose not. And so they put together things that said we have the right to look at ourselves from this perspective. These were the 8 points that they put in their paradigm. We are active participants in lives. We're not just sitting here and white people tell us what the fuck to do. We are part of history. I know you didn't put it in the book. I've got all kinds of history books. I got thousands of history books. I've read probably thousands, and most of them never mentioned my people. Why? Because my people were lazy and stupid and didn't do anything, right? Wrong. Because you chose not to talk about women, because you chose not to talk about blacks, because you chose not to talk about Chicanos, doesn't mean that we aren't active and we didn't do shit in this world. We have, and we continue to do things. We are a pluralistic people. Pluralistic means plural, which means more than one. We are not just brown people. We are not just whites from Spaniard. We are not just blacks from Africa. We are not just Lebanese from Lebanon. We are a mixture of all people. Go to Mexico's. Go to these places. You'll see brown-skinned people, black-skinned people, mestizo, mixed people. We are a pluralistic people. We know community means everybody. We're not stupid. We can create our own. Just because you think America is a white country for white people by white people, sorry, buddies. We were here long before you. And our idea is that we're not white, or we're not brown, or we're not black. We're all of this. We're everything. We're people. We're community. We're engaged in social understandings. We're engaged in what it means to be an undocumented immigrant in this country. And we're going to fight for our brothers and sisters in the so-called Dreamers or DACA. We're engaged in social struggles of poverty, homelessness. We're engaged in social struggles. We're engaged in social understandings. We're not stupid. We know what's happening in the society, and we're going to be active. We're not going to sit back while you fucking do these things in our schools and our children are being affected. We're not going to sit back while you're doing these things by police force. We're not going to sit back. We're going to have police brutality awareness days. We're going to have Indigenous Peoples Day. We're going to celebrate our culture on Dia de los Muertos. We're going to do the things that we need to do. We're not illiterate. We know how to read and write. Some of us speak Spanish much better than you speak even your own language of English. However, you think we're stupid because we don't speak English as good as you. That doesn't make us illiterate, you idiot. That makes us, multilingual, trilingual, bilingual, whatever you want to call it. We can decide for ourselves how we want to perceive the world. You don't have to tell us how to do that. That's an important thing. One day I was, and I don't know if any of you young ladies know this. Anybody know what mansplaining is? Mansplaining? Has anybody ever heard of mansplaining? Has anybody ever heard that term, mansplaining? No? One day I was with one of my friends and she said to me something about that guy over there mansplaining. I hate when they do that. And I was like, what is that? And she said, listen. So I turned, I listened to the guy. He was telling the girl he was on date or dinner, everything, like she was an idiot. So this is why that happens, and this is why that happens. That's why this happens, and this is why that happened. And then this happens because this, and he was explaining everything to her. And she said, that's what it is. When men consider women ignorant and they just believe that they have to explain everything to us like they know everything about the world and we don't know shit. I was like, whoa, mansplaining. New identity, a new term in my world that I had never heard. What about mansplaining to a whole different degree? When one society thinks the other society can't do anything because they're too stupid, and we've got to teach them how to live because they're ignorant people. We're not ignorant. We choose not to take everything from the earth. We choose to let women be equal to men. We choose not to fucking destroy the water and the winds because what we want. We choose not to have this kind of a system. We're not stupid. We are rational people. I can think for myself. And if I think differently than you because I don't think the earth should be raped the way you rape the earth every day, I don't think women should be disrespected the way you disrespect women every day, I don't think education should be used for the purposes you think it should, doesn't make me an idiot. I have my own ability to rationally think. I'm an intellectual person. You don't have to tell me. And finally, I recognize something that maybe white culture doesn't recognize, that we live in a symbiotic relationship with our environment and our community. Whatever happens to me happens to you. Whatever happens to you happens to me. If my students are fucked, I'm fucked. If my students are being treated bad, I'm being treated bad. Through that problem, we are related. We are relations. Mitakwiyase. That's what the Lakota people say up in northern areas of North Dakota. Mitakwiyase. All my relations. Before they start any prayer, before they start any ceremony, they say that. They say all my relations. In other words, everything, the plants, the animals, the ancestors, the mountains, we're all related. And before I start something holy or before I do something good, I call upon all of that, all my relations, to come to me and be in balance. We're in symbiotic relations, aren't we? Professor, teacher, teacher, professor, community member. Why? Because someday you'll be my nurse, maybe. I may be in fucked up shape coming out of a car accident, and maybe I'll be bleeding or burnt, and you'll save me. You will save me. Maybe someday your business will come and help my home or help my child or help, I don't know. We are in a relationship as human beings with each other. I'm not on my own, just floating in the fucking world, and nobody gives a fuck about anybody. Let me repeat that. I'm not on my own, just floating in the world, and nobody gives a fuck about anybody. We're actually related to each other. And I should care when you're getting fucked. I should care when you don't have a home. I should care when you don't have food. I should care when you're being discriminated. I should be cared when you're being police brutality. I should care. We should care. We should understand. This was a whole new world. As part of a social science understanding, Chicano studies said, we exist for the problems in our community, to help with them. We are interdisciplinary: economics, history, political science, sociology, psychology. They all work together to create action, to solve problems. We don't go to school just to fucking get a degree. We don't go to school just to make money. We go to school to solve problems, to become better citizens, to become critical of how we can change things to make things better. And we must be critical of our own institutions in America. They have not provided for women for 250 years. They have not provided equally for blacks. They have not provided equally for undocumented. They have not provided equally for brown. They have not provided for Native American. They have not provided equally for LGBTQ plus. They have not provided equally for the poor. They've not provided equally. How can we not be critical? When we decide how we are going to change this world, I'm talking to you now, students. when you decide how you're going to change this world, because you're gonna. I have to have faith that you will, that you won't just take this education for yourself and make money and leave and live in some fucked up home just by yourself, having barbecues or whatever weekend with money and alcohol. There's something more. Please think about what I'm saying to you. And when you make that decision to take part of your education, not all of it, I want you to have a new home. I want you to have good clothing. I want you to have a car. I want your children to have food. But I also want you to take part of what you've been given on this earth and return it back to this community. Place community at the center of all the research and all the outcomes that you get from this college and your university experiences. That, my friends, was the new paradigm, the new way of thinking that Chicanos wanted you to think about. Okay. There's an article. Before we go on, are there any questions on those three discussions? Any questions on those three discussions? Okay, we got 15 minutes. I want to go over two last things very quickly. There's an article called Chicano Sociology, and I want to give you some highlights about what the author's saying so that when you read it, you know what to be looking for. And also, I want you to have a little bit of my input on it. First, he's going to say in the so-called civil rights movement, is a right given to you by your country if you're a citizen, people began to realize they didn't have those rights. And so they started to fight for them. That's how the Chicano movement gets started. You know that. Schools needed to change because they were exclusive. At that time, only rich white males got to go to universities and colleges. That was it. Nobody else. Part of the reason was there was this myth that poor brown people were stupid. We were lazy. We were violent. We were criminal, whatever. And because of that, so many of us rejected ourselves and wanted to become Americans so bad that we assimilated into their values and we became them. So now we have brown people who drive around in rich, fancy cars, live in rich fucking neighborhoods, but forgot everybody in their communities or other people who might need help. Fuck it. I don't give a shit. I did it. They should learn how to do it themselves. Fuck it. I did it. They should do it themselves. Fuck it. I did 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 it. This whole idea that it's all about you. So at the very beginning of the article, he's talking about that. White university and college had been viewed from their own perspective, and therefore they were biased. And how did they see brown people? Through that bias. They had myths about us, which are not truths, half-truths, that we are controlled and manipulated by our traditions, that we are docile and passive, that we let people push us around, that we're controlled by machismo, that look at me, macho, and no women have ever done anything in Latino countries, that we're violent, criminal, antisocial people. These are just some of the things that are in this article that I want you to look at when you're reading. Civil rights movement comes. Some of us get a chance to go to the colleges and university. We find out they're teaching shit about us. This is what they were teaching. Mexican Americans, we talked about this. They want to be that true American. They talked about all of us being immigrants. And that if we're all immigrants like the European immigrants, why can't we just be good like them? Look at they came here and now they got good jobs. Well, there's a reason. Read what he says. Two big things that you want to get out of here is scientism and universalism. The colleges and universities teach both of these. Scientism, the concept of everything is objective. So when white people look at our community, when white people look at Chicano community and they start talking about our community, it's because they understand it through a scientific lens, and we don't. We're all emotional about it because it's us. That's why Mr. Gomez is always crying and screaming and getting red in the face when he's lecturing you, because he's too emotionally kind of, really? Really? That's why I'm emotional? Or maybe I'm emotional because the shit that you've been fucking doing for so long really is emotional stuff and really is disgusting and terrible, and we should be talking about it. Universalisms, that once they study something through their so-called objective without having any emotion, then they can apply that same rule to everybody in the world. It's the same truth that can be applied to anybody. That's going to be a problem because our world may not be the same as their world, and thereby you can't judge me by your world. In other words, Mr. Gomez, by the way, I've never had alcohol in my life. I'm a vegetarian. I don't have any video games at home. I barely got a 2015 phone that I can barely work one or two things on. I don't care about it. If I judged all of my students by that standard, You can't drink. I've never smoked anything in my life, not tobacco, not any other weed, never taken any drugs like that in my life. If I present all my students who on this weekend are going to go do any of those things, they would be in trouble. If I video games, they'd be in trouble. Eating meat, chicharrones, fucking pig's fat, fried in pig's fat, you'd be in trouble. I don't have the right to judge you by my standards. I have to look at you as an individual in this world with the right to your own understandings of what the earth is and what it means to you. But whites have come to this conclusion through science, quote unquote. I'm unbiased because I'm white. And when I decide something is the truth, it's the truth for everybody, aka universalism. Look at the last 12 points in that article to talk about what he thinks we can do to change things. Okay. So look at those things that I just highlighted for you. I also want to highlight just for a second, again, the video that you're going to be watching for this week, which is called Precious Knowledge. And it talks very quickly again about what was happening historically, how people began to identify themselves as Chicano and creating this new way of thinking. What does it mean? They begin to realize their own culture, their own philosophy, their own history. What did these students think about? What did these students say? Did it help them? Did they not like it? Was it bullshit? How did they view what was happening in these classes? And then I want you to take all of that and to look at what happened. Why did the whites start attacking them? The students were doing better. They were going to college at a higher rate than they'd ever done, ever. The entire school, nobody's ever gone to college at the rate that these students were doing. Why are you ending this program? Why are you attacking it? Why are you saying it's reverse racism against white people? Why are you saying it's separatism that Chicanos want to talk about their history? Why are you saying it's hateful and anti-American? Why are you saying it's fake news that they're really making this shit up and they really hate America anyway? And then how did the community respond when these whites attacked it and destroyed it and outlawed it? The legal protests, the court hearings, the educational procedures, and then the cultural responses. I want you to take a peek at those. This is on the final. So the main part of the final is going to be youth identity power. Section on the article Chicano sociology. Section on the video precious knowledge. Okay. All right. Any questions, concerns, issues that anybody has right now before I let you go out into the wilderness? Hearing none, I appreciate all of you. Oh, somebody got one? Or just somebody saying hi there? Okay. I appreciate you all. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I will get back to you. But make sure you know I'm here for you. I'm not going to ditch you. Whatever we can do to make sure that you're okay. All right. All right. Let me see if I can stop the recording. Stop it.